Hi, I'm Dr. Bertalan Mescu, the medical futurist, and today I'm going to tackle a special topic. I never thought I'm going to address conspiracy theories, especially not to do a whole video on them. But during a medical crisis like the one we face today, lies are not just misleading, they are outright dangerous. So I feel like it's my duty to debunk them, because the only way we can overcome a crisis like this is to understand the challenge and to fight it together, not to entertain ourselves with half-baked campfire stories. Let's dive in. So, one person in Wuhan eats an uncooked bat and your local Walmart runs out of toilet paper. This is such a surreal scenario that it's no wonder people are looking for alternative answers to how their normal lives got blown into pieces in the matter of weeks. And in this age of misinformation, when the trust in our governments and the media are at an all-time low, there are plenty of conspiracy theorists who will rise to the challenge and try to push their own agenda for the susceptible population. And while the truth is usually complex and oftentimes hard to understand, these clean-cut conspiracy narratives are designed to prey on your pre-established suspicions, so they can seem like viable alternatives. And unfortunately, in our ever-connected social networks, these theories have a tendency to spread just as rapidly as COVID-19 does. Let's start with the most widespread theory, that the virus escaped from a Chinese laboratory. This rumor came to light because Wuhan has one of China's only level 4 biolaboratories where researchers have been studying coronaviruses for a long time, along with lots of other more nasty viruses. I have to say, this theory is at least plausible. There are maps spreading on Facebook that show how close the laboratory is to the Wuhan wet market, the suspected epicenter of the outbreak. And our brains are naturally wired to look for patterns, so people who come across this information can see it as finding a missing piece of the puzzle. And who doesn't like a good detective tale? But first things first. A level 4 biolaboratory has the highest level of biocontainment precautions to isolate dangerous biological agents. This is a universal standard set by the CDC. There is no level 5. This is as good as it gets. And the chances of viruses escaping a level 4 environment are extremely low. And with most conspiracy theories, if we take a deeper look, we discover a hidden agenda. The idea that the new coronavirus originated from the Wuhan lab came from a documentary produced by the Epoch Times, an English-language news outlet with links to a Chinese religious cult that has long been persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. In their documentary, they insisted on calling COVID the CCP virus, or the Chinese Communist Party's virus, making it completely clear what their true agenda is. And why do I say that theories like this are dangerous? Because since this notion went mainstream, it has even been used by the Trump administration to cast blame on the Chinese, pushing the two countries' relationship to an all-time low. By helping to spread this theory, people only helped a Chinese anti-government religious cult they probably didn't even know exists. If we believe the virus came from the Wuhan lab, it's easy to take another step and also buy that the virus was actually bioengineered there by Chinese scientists as a biological weapon. As I said, it's harder to accept that a global catastrophe like this could happen as easily and coincidentally as it did, and we feel like we are missing the bigger picture. But as Neil deGrasse Tyson said, the good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. And in this case, the science clearly proved that COVID-19 is a zoonotic virus, meaning it came from an animal and jumped into the human population. That fact was verified by several independent laboratories around the world, and even an investigation by the United States military concluded that the weight of evidence indicates that the virus's origin is natural. But that won't stop people from spreading misinformation, and now nearly 3 in 10 Americans believe that COVID-19 was made in a lab. Unfortunately, 2 of those are President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who keep on claiming that they have evidence that contradicts their own military and intelligence agencies and the scientific consensus. Of course, that evidence is either just as elusive as Trump's tax returns, or this will mark the first time that his administration lies. Nevertheless, this theory has come in handy for a president in election year who is looking to cast blame somewhere else. Now, of course, in response, China deployed its own propaganda machine to push their own agenda. Lately, China's foreign ministry spokesman tweeted that it's possible that the US military brought the virus to Wuhan. And in this day and age, that was more than enough for a new conspiracy to go widespread in China. As much as Americans believe that the virus came from the Wuhan lab, a lot of people in China believe it was American military personnel who had brought the virus to China during their participation in the 2019 military World Games in Wuhan last October. And as Trump was pushing the name Wuhan virus, there was accompanying attempt in China to rename COVID-19 the USA virus. And still, all of this stems from one fake documentary film. It's like falling dominoes, and now the two biggest superpowers in the world are at each other's throats in a war of words simply because some of us can't stop sharing unverified conspiracy theories. It's a funny word, isn't it? And now, let's travel from the land of plausible lies to straight up crazy town.
This is just one of over a dozen fires targeting 5G towers in the Netherlands. And the country isn't alone. Cyprus, Belgium and Ireland among those home to conspiracy theorists who believe 5G may have some connection to COVID-19.
One of the biggest new conspiracy theories is that 5G networks spread the virus. This theory clearly shows that a PhD is not required to create a Twitter account. It should be needless to say that it is biologically impossible for viruses to spread using the electromagnetic spectrum. The latter are waves or photons, while the former are biological particles composed of proteins and nucleic acids. It's mind-boggling that I even have to address this. But that's how conspiracy theories work. They take something we fear, like the electromagnetic radiation of 5G networks, they add the suspicion, like the notion that there is a hidden agenda behind the rapid rollout of 5G networks, mix it up and put it over something that already preys on our mind, like the fear of COVID-19. In this case, our sommelier was a guy named David Icke, who believes 5G is a global conspiracy to cull the population. His followers claim he's a world-renowned scientist who is being hunted by the medical industry for saying the truth. In reality, he's a former football player, sports pundit and Holocaust denier who happens to have published 20 books about the most asinine conspiracy theories you can find out there. I wonder if he has any agenda by pushing this 5G narrative before his new book comes out. And if anyone still believes that it's 5G towers that spread the virus, ask yourself this: how come that 5G networks are only deployed in 34 countries, while COVID-19 is present in over 200 countries at the moment? Now, here comes my favorite. COVID-19 was unleashed by Bill Gates. Billionaires are elusive figures. Some of them are detached from the rest of us, and some of them are straight up evil. They are perfect to be cast as villains. And as far as I remember, in the 90s, some people believed that Gates is a lizard man creature person. So when he stepped into the spotlight after COVID-19 hit, there was already a prejudice against him. Some people clearly didn't understand what the founder of a computer company has to do with epidemiology. Unfortunately, that confusion led to theories, and those theories quickly got out of control. Now there are people who believe that the virus was actually created by him to either cull the population or make a few more billions on the vaccine, or both. But here's the thing. Gates has pretty much left the big tech arena for a while now, and his foundation is the most generous philanthropic organization out there. The man willingly lost his place as the world's richest person to save people in third world countries. It's so unfair to say that now he's trying to make that money back by killing people that it's mind-blowing. Gates spent much of the second act of his career initiating and supporting efforts to prevent and control infectious diseases. His knowledge on viruses is on par with the world's best epidemiologists, and he spent the past decade trying to prepare us for a pandemic like the one we have now. Just listen to him speak about it 5 years ago.
Well, at least in the nuclear case, you've got to say we take it quite seriously. We budget a lot of money, have a lot of people who think about nuclear deterrence, and I'm very glad that work's being done, and I rate the chance of a nuclear war in my lifetime as being fairly low. I rate the chance of a widespread epidemic far worse than Ebola in my lifetime is well over 50%.
As the conspiracy theory goes, Gates owns the patent for the new coronavirus that wasn't even discovered until January 2020, and he has shares in companies that are currently working around the clock to come up with a vaccine. The latter part is actually true. Gates did help fund many potential coronavirus vaccines. And here is another thing. He's wasting billions of dollars by doing so, only for us to stay alive and to be able to go back to our normal lives as soon as possible. The signs and patterns that conspiracy theorists are finding here only stem from the fact that Gates is one of those who are part of the solution. So for anyone who might be watching this and spreads lies about him, maybe stop being the problem, or at least try to be a tiny bit thankful. And with that, we arrive to the good old Benjamins, to the notion that a vaccine is the greatest business in the world and not a highly risky philanthropic endeavor. To the notion that somehow selling surgical masks and toilet papers on a grand scale are making more money than what the global recession will burn away. Because one thing that's common in all these theories is that there is a group of elusive figures who unleash this virus simply to make money. And frankly, money is a big factor in all this, but mainly for the conspiracy theorists. The way David Icke is trying to sell his books, or the way China and the US are trying to blame each other to come out of this crisis untainted, there are many other clever actors who are trying to prey on our fears and suspicions only to sell their sketchy products. Between two crazy rants, Alex Jones, for example, urges viewers to buy expensive miracle pills that he claims can cure all known diseases. But when we already made up our minds that the government, the mainstream media, and even Big Pharma lie to us, and we live in an echo chamber of like-minded people, it can be hard to see that the people who push these narratives are not some truth-seeking philanthropists. In their own words,
look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
Now, it's easy to get lost in the how and the when and the who. Those are the questions that drive every great detective story. We can come up with an infinite number of intriguing narratives. And when people are scared or feel like they are being lied to, they will be susceptible enough to listen to them. But the only question that should matter is the why. Why would Bill Gates create an elaborate mass murder scheme over decades to make a few millions while he both has more and has given away more than what he could make on a successful vaccine? Why would any government use a weapon that they can't control and most likely will backfire? If the global elite wants to cull the population, why would they use a virus that has a relatively low death rate and mostly preys on the elderly? I even heard that this is a scheme so governments wouldn't have to pay pension. I guess saving some of that sweet pension money does make sense as we face the biggest economic meltdown of the past 100 years. Finally, allow me to introduce you to my favorite philosophical principle, Occam's razor. It states that when you have two competing theories that make exactly the same predictions, the simpler one is usually the one that is true. In this case, COVID-19 is exactly what it looks like. An unfortunate but statistically inevitable event. Experts have been warning us for decades that we are long overdue for. So if there is anything this pandemic should teach us, is that our faith should always be in science, because that's the only thing that doesn't have an agenda and is actually able to lead us out of a crisis. But for that, we need to come together, focus on the common goal, and not be subservient to the small but loud minority who claim they know better. Because whenever we spread a conspiracy theory, chances are we have not discovered a missing puzzle piece, but we are accidentally pushing someone else's agenda. And the only thing science cannot do is to fight fire with fire. When someone claims that the virus was bioengineered, us scientists are obliged to say stuff like, "We didn't find evidence," or "the weight of evidence indicates otherwise," even though it's a near 100% certainty. Because that's how science works. It's subtle, it's cautious, it's soft-speaking. And that's its handicap too. Because nobody supervises the likes of Alex Jones or David Icke. They can be as loud as they can, and unfortunately people tend to listen to the harshest, edgiest, most confident voices. So, I think you and I, on the other side, have an obligation now. That whenever we see others spreading misinformation, we get into that conversation. During easier times, we could look away to have our own peace of mind. But now, at a time of crisis, we have a duty to push the truth. Because now there are lives on the line. As it's stated in HBO's Chernobyl, every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. And sooner or later, that debt is paid. Stay safe, everybody. If you like this video and want to hear more about COVID-19 and technologies around it, please subscribe below.